Call the cops. He's building illegally on HOA land. That's what she yelled, loud enough to wake up every dog within 3 counties, as I stood there on the porch of my grandfather's old farmhouse, the one I'd spent half a year restoring with my own 2 hands. After scraping together every dime, I had to buy it back from foreclosure. 2 police cruisers came barreling up the gravel driveway, lights flashing red and blue over the wet boards I'd just finished repairing. And there she was, a woman in a pink blazer, finger pointed like she was crowning a new king, absolutely sure she could dictate what happened on a piece of land she'd never owned. Thing is, she had no clue the person she was trying to humiliate was a whole lot more than just another homeowner. Tell me, honestly, what would you have said? It was 6:30 on a Saturday morning in June, and I was already elbow-deep in rotten wood and old memories. The front door hung sideways on its hinges, worn out from decades of Vermont winters, and it was finally time to set things right. If you've ever fought to keep something that matters in your family, you know exactly why I was there that morning. There's a certain kind of chill in the air up here, smells like pine and sawdust, and the second it hit me, I was 8 years old again, following Grandpa Pierce around this same porch with a hammer I could barely lift. This house sits on 2.3 acres of rolling pasture, built back in 1903 by my great-grandfather with timber he hauled himself from the back 40. It's the kind of place that's all about old-world craftsmanship, with floorboards that don't even creak if you know where to step. As a kid, this felt like the center of the universe. Grandpa would point out across the stone wall to the maple grove and tell me how our property line ran clear to the road, and how our family had been here since before the town even had paved streets. Pierce land, he'd say, with that quiet pride you only find in Vermont farmers. Nobody can take what's rightfully yours, Landon. Not if you know your rights and keep your paperwork straight. I wish he could have seen me there, carefully prying away the old door frame with the same claw hammer he once used. But you know how life goes. After Grandpa died, the taxes stacked up faster than I could pay him. Rather than let the place get snatched up at auction, I bought it back myself. Every penny I had, just to keep it in the family. Sometimes you gotta pay twice for what should have always been yours. So there I was, hammer in hand, when I heard the crunch of expensive tires on gravel. A white Lexus crawled up my driveway like it was stalking prey. The driver's door swung open, and out stepped this woman, dressed for a real estate magazine shoot instead of a Saturday morning. She looked about 58, shellacked blonde hair, a pink blazer that probably cost more than my truck, carrying a clipboard and smiling in that way that says, "I'm in charge here." "Good morning," she called out, way too cheerful to be sincere. "I'm Cordelia Blackwood, president of the Riverside Estates Homeowners Association. We need to have a conversation about your project here." I straightened up, brushing sawdust off my jeans, and gave her a good look. Everything about her screamed authority. The way she clutched that clipboard like a sword, the stance that said she was used to getting her way. But real authority, the kind that matters, doesn't announce itself with designer clothes or barking orders. Real authority knows where its power ends. "Ma'am," I said, keeping it polite, "I appreciate you coming by, but I think you've got the wrong idea. This property isn't part of any homeowners association. My family's owned this land since 1903, way before any subdivisions showed up around here." Her smile froze a little. She started flipping through her papers like they were some kind of holy book. "I'm afraid that's where you're mistaken, Mr. Pierce. The Riverside Estates HOA expanded jurisdiction as of last spring's community meeting. Your property falls under our architectural guidelines now." She gestured at my tools and a pile of salvage trim. "Major renovation requires HOA approval." Something cold settled in my gut, but I kept my face neutral. "Ms. Blackwood, I'll need to see the legal documentation that gives your HOA authority over this property. County records say this land has never been under any HOA restrictions." She pulled out a folded survey map and spread it on the hood of her Lexus. Red lines drawn like she was mapping out her own kingdom, swallowing half the countryside, extending way beyond anything official. I glanced at her so-called survey. "Ma'am, that's not a binding document. HOA jurisdiction has to be established by covenants and restrictions that property owners agree to. My family never signed anything. And I've got the original land grant and every deed since, including Grandpa's 1972 survey." Her face turned pink to match her jacket. For the first time, I saw her mask crack. Mr. Pierce, you don't understand the seriousness of this. We work hard to maintain property values. We can't allow substandard construction and non-conforming improvements. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about the law. This was about control, about someone who'd gotten used to pushing others around. I told her, I'm restoring a historic farmhouse, using traditional materials, and everything's permitted through the right channels. I've got all the paperwork, happy to show you if it helps. She snapped the map shut, eyes sharp. Mr. Pierce, this is your last chance. File for review, pay the fees, or we'll take serious action. I almost laughed, but I know trouble when I see it. Ma'am, I won't be paying fees to an organization that has no say here. You might want to check with your lawyer before going further. She glared at me, took a bunch of photos of my house, my truck, even me, like she was building a case. We'll see about that. You'll be hearing from us. Then she peeled out in her Lexus, spitting gravel at my porch. I stood there, thinking of Grandpa's words. Owning land means being ready to defend it, not with fists, but with knowledge and truth. So I pulled every deed, permit, and scrap of documentation I had. I dug into county records, checked when Riverside Estates HOA was formed, what their real boundaries were. Turns out, they'd been established just 4 years ago, with official jurisdiction over 47 lots, none of which included my property. But the really wild part? There were complaints on file from other neighbors outside the HOA's reach. The Hendersons, the Kowalskis, the Weatherbys, all cited for made-up violations, all harassed for fees they didn't know. The next morning, I had a fat envelope in my mailbox. Official notice of violation, 20 invented infractions, each more ridiculous than the last. Unauthorized exterior alterations, non-conforming material usage, failure to maintain community aesthetic. Some even quoted codes that didn't apply, like a swimming pool safety ordinance for a farmhouse restoration. It was deliberate intimidation, and, honestly, it pissed me off. So I called in backup. Mary Chun at the recorder's office helped me pull every document proving the boundaries. Inspector Jim at the building department reviewed my permits and said, if your property isn't in an HOA, you don't need their blessing. But Cordelia wasn't done. Someone posted on the neighborhood app about outsider development, and while they didn't name me, the photos were clear. Comments split right down the middle. Old-timers defending the project, newcomers demanding community standards. That night, a white Lexus creeped past the house, slow enough to count my tools. Cordelia wasn't backing down. She moved from fake paperwork to public shaming, hoping pressure would get me to fold. But what she didn't know is I've worked in local government. I know the rules, and I know when someone's bluffing. A couple days later, I got a letter from a law firm. Cease and desist, citing statutes that had nothing to do with HOA boundaries. It was all smoke and mirrors. The next twist came at the library, when Eleanor Fairchild, who's lived here longer than the town has sidewalks, slid into the chair across from me. Heard you're having trouble with that Blackwood woman, she said, and dumped a folder of meeting notes and clippings on the table. Cordelia's whole empire had been built by packing meetings with her friends, voting herself power, then muscling out anyone who objected. Most folks just don't know how to fight back, Eleanor said. But you do. That's when the real escalation began. Cordelia put up a fake security sign on my property, claiming Riverside Security Services was patrolling. I yanked it out and called the sheriff, documenting everything. That evening, my phone rang, Cordelia herself, threatening legal action for theft of association property. I kept it cool, told her she was trespassing, and hung up. Then I filed a police report for harassment. By the next Saturday, the cops were back, but this time, not for me. Cordelia had called them again, hoping to have me hauled off for violating community standards. But when the officers saw my documentation and then her hand-altered maps, it all fell apart. Ma'am, you don't have any legal authority here, Officer Garrison said. Property owners have rights. The look on her face, equal parts disbelief and rage, I'll never forget it. You'd think that'd be the end, but Cordelia took the fight public. Posts on every app, letters to the paper, drone photos, even a community meeting where she tried to paint me as some developer ruining rural Vermont. But this time I was ready. Eleanor and a dozen old-timers backed me up. When Cordelia started shouting about community values, I stood and laid out every deed, every permit, every survey, right there for the room to see. People started asking questions, and suddenly, her power faded. The next week, the Millbrook Gazette ran a front-page story, "Property Rights Dispute Divides Community." And then the real twist. The state attorney general's office got involved, investigating Cordelia for consumer fraud, not just for what she did to me, but to a string of other property owners. It all came to a head in county court. Cordelia and her lawyer came in with the same tired story, but my stack of documents told the truth. When the judge asked for my name and job, I told her, Landon Pierce, mayor of Millbrook. The room exploded. Cordelia had been trying to bully the mayor of the town she claimed to protect. The judge ruled against her, with prejudice, and referred her HOA for criminal investigation. The Riverside Estates HOA dissolved in weeks. The farmhouse restoration got finished just in time for Thanksgiving. Eleanor and the Historical Society put up a marker at the gate. Pierce Family Homestead, established 1846, restored 2024. Now, on quiet mornings, I stand on the porch Grandpa built, coffee in hand, and watch the sun rise over land my family fought for. A house that stands as proof that the real power lies in truth, not intimidation. But let me ask you, if you'd been standing on that porch when the Lexus pulled up, what would you have done? Drop your thoughts below, especially if you've ever had to fight for your rights. Do you think HOAs should have this kind of power? Where's the line between protecting a community and abusing authority? Share your story in the comments. And if you believe in standing up for what's right, send this to a friend who loves a good plot twist.